This thing has been on my mind for the longest time. It's been so difficult sharing it. But I need to come right out and say it. Not everyone is meant to drive. Some are just going to be passengers. Now, before you come for my head, hear me out. I didn't just wake up one day to arrive at this conclusion. It has taken me 10 years of training hundreds of students to actually come to this conclusion. So I'm not doing this video to discourage anyone and also to absolve responsibility from bad instructors. But the truth is the truth. So let's look into it. Driving is a mental activity as much as it is a physical one. And I'm sure you have seen so many people drive before, and it is the brain that is literally coordinating everything that the person is doing. But what if I told you that not everyone's brain is actually prepared for that level of cognitive abilities? Anytime you want to install a software onto any device, sometimes you may get the error message that the device does not have the capacity or the requirements to be able to install that particular application. And it's the same thing. Everyone has his or her brain wired in a certain way. So for you to be able to drive well, you need to have that capacity to actually drive. This has nothing to do with gender or even age. It purely has to do with how your brain is wired for the particular activity. Some people have like very well wired brains, some too it needs some level of development. So are for those that have underdeveloped brains, especially with regards to the cognitive abilities for driving, they will always struggle. That is why some people learn the driving easily, and some also struggle for a long period before they actually, learn how to drive. Let's look at some of the reasons why I'm saying some people will never be able to learn how to drive. There are some people who have this um, abnormal levels of fear and anxiety in them. Sometimes you look at it and it's almost spiritual. It's almost like now it's in their DNA. This uncontrolled fear. I don't know whether there's anything like maybe a phobia for driving. But yes, if someone has a phobia for driving, no amount of teaching and time investment in them will help them to attain the level of driving. Sometimes the brain works have to be done first before they actually attempt doing the work itself. Some people have abnormal fear and they can't even picture themselves driving. I've had students that, you are teaching them how to drive, and sometimes you encourage them, they're on the road, and sometimes they themselves be like, hey, today me, I'm driving. It's like they've not even been able to picture it in their heads that they can drive. And even before they drive, they are able to more or less picture themselves driving. Sometimes it's due to the way they were brought up, their upbringing. I had a student once, I remember, early 40s, and then she was learning how to drive perfectly well, even though she had issues of fear. Fear is actually not a bad thing. It becomes bad when it is overwhelming you from performing what you need, performing your duties or performing your tasks. You get it? That is when it becomes abnormal. Fear in itself is a good thing. It keeps you on your toes and helps you to take precautions because you don't want to get any accidents. Now, back to my story. I remember I had to be like always encouraging her, you can do it, because I realized she was learning the skill very well, but in her mind, she was always afraid, always thinking negative thoughts, and that was what was hindering her. I remember one time we were driving, she almost lost focus and nearly caused an accident. And she panicked. She was afraid. And because of that, she didn't want to drive again. And I remember she called her mom, and the mom was like, oh, at this age, she was in her early 40s. At this age, don't worry yourself. You get a driver, you can afford it. Don't come and die on me, oh, you are my only daughter. That sort of thing. And I realized her mom was doing her a great disservice. So she didn't drive for about 2 3 days, and I kept calling and encouraging her to come back. She was doing good because we were almost at the finish line. And she came back, and then we continued practicing for some time. For her, it took her, a longer period than the average student. But eventually she drove, and now she drives so comfortably. Sometimes she calls me and is like, "Oh, I can't believe today I'm driving, and I was so afraid in the beginning." So some people have levels of fear that you can just rewire with time. You just need to keep encouraging them and pushing them. But some to see, they are so like it's so engraved in their DNA, like you can't, there's nothing you can do about it. Even the sight, like even sitting behind the steering wheel, even and the car has even started, they are shaking. Sometimes when they are even turning, it's almost like they are wrestling with principalities. You should see. I don't know whether any of you has taught someone how to drive before. Before some of them, it's like they are turning, and then it's like, see, even people tame wild animals like horses and lions and bulls, and even instruct them under command. This is a cow. A car is just a machine. You just need to learn to operate it. That's all. The car will not do anything that you don't instruct it to do or set it out to do. And oh my God, so it can be serious. Sometimes it's very serious. Sometimes the anxiety. So for such a person, you don't force them to drive. You just need some of them, they need therapy. You need to do the groundwork first in the mind before you start hitting the road. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble. And if you don't have a very patient instructor, that one to double trouble for you. So, and some, like I said, for some people, regardless of the level of patience and investment you do in them, they still don't, attain the level of driving you need them to attain. So they need to just take some steps back and do the brain works before they proceed. Sometimes this fear could have, would have been a result of PTSD. So they had instances where in the past maybe there were instances where they had a serious accident, or they saw someone involved in a serious accident, or they tried learning and they were involved in a serious accident. Sometimes it could even be a minor accident. So this fear has gripped them and is now even in their DNA, and it is just preventing them from, coming out to drive. I've had students that, some of them were dealing with very serious emotional and mental issues. Mental issues, not that they are mad, but I remember I had a student once who had lost the dad not too long before he came to the driving school. So the whole time it was almost like his spirit was down. Like there's nothing you can do to like encourage him to lift his spirit up. Such a person just needs time, and then with time you can just roll him back into the field. But you don't force someone to drive when mentally they are not prepared to drive. And like I said, this has nothing to do with gender or age, because I've come across 13, 14, 15-year olds that were like hardwired, and they were able to drive and navigate well, even on the playing field. And I've seen people who are like early 20s, late 20s, early 30s, late 30s, and they are struggling. Okay. So it has nothing to do with age, nor even gender. And sometimes even the men cry, they struggle. So take notes. Number two, some people are mentally lazy. People are naturally mentally lazy, will struggle to learn how to drive. Thinking before speaking or thinking before taking an action is actually very difficult for some people. So when you are mentally lazy, you always want to go with your weights, and you go with your not even instincts, but you just go with the flow like that. And you can't do that thing with driving. Okay. Some people treat driving as if it's more or less like it's a marathon, not a sprint. So some people just wish that, oh, once they start the car and hit the road, they just accelerate, boom, they've gotten to their destination. Not understanding that it's step by step is a process. You drive, you get to maybe an intersection, you pause, you check, you go, you meet a traffic light. Sometimes you have to pause and go. For some people, it is mentally draining. Like they can just drive for 10, 20 minutes. I'm tired. Mentally, their minds are not, exercised well enough to handle the pressures that come with operating a vehicle and also obeying the rules and regulations as you are driving. So that's it. Some people are just mentally lazy. And if you're an instructor, you would always struggle teaching such a person how to drive. And trust me, if you are that type, you need to just, lay back a little and exercise some level of patience. You have to be able to like mentally prepare yourself for any journey ahead of you and take your time to learn. Like everything is step by step. Some people are just lazy and they don't want to like, methodologically do things. Like you tell them, okay, anytime you want to signal, sorry, anytime you want to turn, signal. They just want to just be going like that without any sort of like thought process, methodology, nothing. They are just everything should just be straightforward. Let's go, let's go. It doesn't work like that. So people who are like that will struggle to learn how to drive, and some will not be able to learn how to drive at all. So people who are mentally lazy, they struggle. Driving requires that you have a good eye to hand and feet coordination. There's no two ways about this. So as you are driving, your mind is scanning the road, you are looking at scenarios, you are looking at obstacles, your hands are doing the direction, and your feet are doing the pacing. And they should always be in harmony. For some people, your brains are not well trained to handle this level of harmony or activity. So anytime you are learning how to drive, you struggle. So sometimes in the beginning it's very normal. Sometimes you are driving, you want to apply the brakes, then you mistakenly go and press accelerator. Sometimes it's the vice versa, and you are driving and maybe you are approaching a curve, instead of you to turn, you are still there, but you are expecting that the car should turn. The car cannot turn on your behalf. You are the one controlling the car. So there's this level of hand-to-eye coordination that you need, and not everyone has attained that particular level of maturity in their minds. Mind you, there's a portion of the brain that actually manages these sort of things. Some just have that part of their brains more developed than some. It's almost like riding a bicycle. For a bicycle, you need balance, right? You need to be able to balance yourself and move at the same time. Even if you haven't partaken in any activity that involves balancing, usually when you start, that particular side of your brain starts to develop, and with time, it matures. Growing up, I always had this thing that I did, and it was almost like challenging myself to see whether I could balance well. And I see that sometimes people just do it for fun, but you don't know it is actually developing that side of your brain. Anytime you are walking and you find yourself maybe somewhere, maybe the edge of a pavement or the edge of a gutter, and you have like this thin path, then sometimes you decide to just what walk on this very thin path. You put one foot in front of the other, you try to balance yourself and walk all the way through. What you're actually doing is that you are exercising that part of your brain that deals with balancing. So when you start doing things like maybe learning how to ride a bicycle or maybe a motorcycle, it helps, okay, because ideally your brain has to learn to balance. And I think it's the same thing with the driving. Your mind should be able to coordinate stuff very easily. And sometimes some people, it's like they don't have control over their body. It's like the moment they are driving and maybe they receive the signal, I need to stop. Just for the body to coordinate in harmony and take the action, they end up rather making a big mess out of it. So some of them will tell you, oh, I was trying to apply the accelerator and I ended up applying the brake, and then vice versa. So for some people, it's so bad that even when they are driving, they want to look at their feet, press the pedals. If you do this in the beginning or the early stages of driving, I'll pardon you. But after like a week or two, you shouldn't be, making this particular error. Some people, you see them driving and it's like they are, tilting their head to see their foot. They want to see their foot pressing the pedal. I mean, how? I mean, like, it means that your brain and your hands and legs are not in harmony. You are still like disjointed. So you always want to see what your hands and legs are doing. Some people, they are driving, instead of to focus on the road, they are looking at their hands doing the turning. And when they are turning, they are looking at the steering. No. In the beginning, like I said, you can make this particular error. But as time goes on, after a week or two, you shouldn't be making this error. Now, let's say you are walking somewhere. Do you look at your body making the movement towards that place? No, it's actually very weird. So you just keep your eye on where you are going. You are constantly scanning your environment. And then what? You just walk there seamlessly. You don't watch your feet take the steps as you are going. Before your feet reach anywhere, you've already seen the place. You've analyzed whatever you need to analyze. If there's a small bridge, there that you have to take your time to maneuver, you do it. If like there's a hole somewhere you want to jump over it, you've literally, Analyze everything and taking your decision in your mind before you execute it. Okay. Now take note. Anytime you are driving, you should see the car as an extension of your body. So the body of the car becomes your body, the tires become your feet. So you have a mental picture of the size of your car and then the position of your legs. You don't have to see the tires to be able to drive well. Some people, it's like when they are driving, it's like they want to see the front of the car. You see them stretching and they want to see the front of the car as they are driving. You don't need to. Even before you sit in the car, you have a fair idea of the dimension in your head and you sit down. So as you are driving, you just relax. You literally know how big you are on the road or how small you are on the road, and then you go. Some people mentally cannot be able to, to visualize and do this. And for such people, they always struggle. And even when they learn, I mean, you just at a point in time, you just give up because it's like that part of their brain responsible for those stuff are just not kicking in. They are just not working. So that is that. Some people also have challenges navigating through space as they are moving. So it's like, okay, they are moving, other people are moving. You can just observe and then like, we can all move in harmony without any interference. And some people have difficulties, comprehending like movements, okay, and navigation. Very, very important. So they struggle to drive straight. Like some people can't just sit down and, just drive straight. I don't. Yes, let me just put it that way. They can't. They have issues with navigation, and when they are driving and they are drifting off, they can't see it. It's difficult for them to perceive it. So let's say you are driving, you are instructing someone, and or you are learning how to drive, and then it's like maybe your instructor tells you that, can't you see that you are moving into the other lane? They can't see it. They For some of them, you show them and they're like, oh yeah, I just realized I drifted off. It tells you that okay, they can recognize the error and correct it. Some will tell you that they are not seeing it at all. But then you can even look on the road, uh, should I obstacles and everything, and you realize that you are not on the straight path. Some people have difficulty. Initially, I used to think that sometimes it's very deliberate, they are not paying attention. So I used to be very hard on students like that. But I realized that it is actually a genuine problem. They have difficulties perceiving space and their positionings anytime they are driving. So it's like they can be driving in one lane, they are drifting off, they can't even see. They are driving in the middle of the road, they can't see because when they look around it, they can't really like, I don't know how to put it. The particular part of their brain responsible for that is just not clicking. I'm not making excuses for such people. I've come to realize that it is actually a genuine problem. So for such people, when you're teaching them how to drive, you just need to be a little bit more patient and alert all the time and use a different way of teaching them. Some never attain the level of driving they need to attain, and then, in fact, like I said, not everyone is meant to drive. But with some of them, once you realize the problem, you know the areas to tackle anytime you are with them on the road. They have issues placing themselves well and navigate, like they have issues with navigation. So even as the road is meandering, they are not able to meander alongside with it. They always go too far and they have to always correct their mistakes. So let me just give you an example. So let's say you have a winding road like this, right? You see, if you are going, for someone who is very good at navigation, they can always keep an eye on the edge of the road and meander alongside with it. People who have problems with navigation will suffer. It's like they will be going, they realize they are going too far, and then before you realize they are in the middle, and then it's like you have just say they are, oh my god, they are just off. Like they have issues with navigation. And I think when it comes to the issue of navigation, if you are the type that grew up riding a bicycle, of course, it helps develop that side of your brain. For those of you who like to play video games a lot, games that require like racing and everything, it helps with the navigation aspect, the navigation part of your brain. It helps to a certain degree. Those that also use simulators to learn how to drive before they actually, get onto the road, it helps to prepare that side of your brain. It's very, very important. But some people, you try and try and try, it never works. They have issues with navigation. Let's also look at another example. With the issue of navigation, right? If let's say you are here, there's a way you bend the steering wheel that you end here. There's also another way you bend the steering wheel that you also end here. So at any point in time when you want to turn, you should be able to visualize the bend. Like you should be able to know, okay, fine, I'm here. I want to end up here. So how do I bend to get here? Now with a good sense of navigation and training, you can do that. Now, people who have a poor sense of navigation will always struggle, and there's always a trial and error all the time. So sometimes they end up too close, and then they come here. Sometimes they end up in the middle. Sometimes they end up here, and then they have to go here. It is always on and off. Now, with training, you can learn to aim and then get to your particular destination. But then with some people too, I don't know. It's not. It has nothing to do with poor eyesight. No, it has nothing to do with poor eyesight. It's just that mental space where that allows you to navigate properly when you are driving. So instructors take notes. So you can teach them. So for such people that struggle, you don't teach them like the normal person. You have to be very creative when it comes to teaching such people. Like I said, some will still not be able to get it, but then others too, yes, if you tweak things a little, they will get it. Every student is different. Now, depending on their level of mental capacity or mental maturity with regards to their cognitive abilities, you have to develop strategic ways to teach them and be very patient with them. However, like I said, for some, they just need some time off to more or less like figure things out in their heads before they come again. So don't lose faith or hope just like that. Sometimes it's just maybe at the time you want to learn, it's not the appropriate time. It doesn't see the fact that you need to be 18 years and above before you learn how to drive doesn't necessarily mean that at the age of 18 you're actually mentally prepared for the task. No. And there are some people who were even prepared at 16 years and they learned how to drive and they were okay. So don't always look at it like, oh, my younger brother is driving, my younger sister is driving. Even this girl car can drive, or even this. No, it doesn't work like that. And age becomes a factor as you grow older because your reflexes are usually much sharper when you are younger as compared to when you are older. But it is not always like a linear line that you follow. So let's say, for example, you can't say that someone who is 18 years is more mentally prepared to drive than someone who is like 25 years. It's not always the case. Sometimes, even at the age of 25, you are not even that prepared mentally. So there's a whole lot when it comes to this. So please let me know whether you've learned something from this particular video. I'll be more than glad to hear your views. I've not sat down to do like a research into it and gather like people who learned out. No, I've not. This is just purely based on what observation. So if you know someone who has done research into this, or I'll be glad to also be enlightened more and help people in the best capacity that I have to also train people better how to drive. Bye for now. See you soon and adios. And adios.
But the work is done. It always will be.